the first day of February, which means we've had power back for, well, it's still less than a complete day. Here in Nova Scotia, we have a first world problem. We have problem functioning as a first world territory. A privatized monopoly on a public utility, which basically translates as, you're fucked. As usual, I'm sitting in the land of Nova Scotia. But today I'm in a very special spot. The gas station that has a generator. Yep. Back in the 1980s and the 1990s, it wasn't uncommon for the power to go out about once a year. As of the 2000s, it could go off multiple times a week. And not really because of a bad snowstorm or anything like that. A bird defecated on the line and you lost power. There might be no rational explanation for it, but power went out quite often. And there were some people who snowmobiled along trails where apparently large lines ran, providing power to various parts of the province. And they used to say that they used to maintain almost like these inland areas where the power lines were, and people could snowmobile along that area. But then they let it all grow up, and so it's not surprising that once they stopped maintaining things, the power started going out quite often. Though, it wasn't that impressive of a snowstorm, though it was kind of a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow mixed, not that much wind. And yet, sometime prior to 8 o'clock last night, the power went out. And it is now almost 3 o'clock the next day, and the power is still out. Yeah, that's life in Nova Scotia. That's life with a privatized power company. It's privatized, the company has a monopoly, and we're all screwed. And the power rates are pretty high too. Alright, so this is day 2, day 2 without power. Yeah, well, power just came back here in Sherbrooke, which is not where my home is. Therefore, power's probably still out there. Power did come back yesterday, depending on whose estimate. I don't remember, I wasn't home when it came back. Depending on the estimate, it was either back for an hour or two. After being out since Friday evening, going out at Friday evening, coming back for about 2 hours in the afternoon of Saturday, it went right back out again. So it was just on long enough to trick you into thinking, oh, it's over with. There's nothing to do, nothing to do in Nova Scotia other than call the power outage phone line and listen to what lies they're telling you next. Yeah. That's life in Nova Scotia. That's living. That's living. Calling the Nova Scotia Power Company's power outage line. Just listening to see what lies they're telling you next. And the random numbers they pull out of their ass when they're telling you when the power will come back. What's really interesting is when the power goes out in Nova Scotia, they usually end up calling in workers from New Brunswick. After the delay of people from another province traveling here to help our understaffed. Oh, damn, that's just pathetic. And Nova Scotia Power is supposed to be a very, very profitable corporation. At least any time I ever heard anything about their, the actual profits that they and their shareholders get, it always sounds like they're doing well. But then again, I don't follow those things very closely. All I know is they hire less people, do less maintenance except for emergency situations, and up the rates. A privatized monopoly on a public utility. Yeah, our only options for power is Nova Scotia Power. So it's a monopoly. I'd say they got a monopoly. And I'm pretty sure they're privately owned. They're privatized. The power for this province is privatized. A privatized monopoly. Who would ever thought that businessmen could be sleazy and that we'd have poor service? Who would ever think of that? Other than everybody. When I get power back, I think the first thing I'm going to do, once I have power to the pump and thus running water, first thing I think I'm going to do once I have a flushable toilet is defecate. It's the first day of February, which means we've had power back for, well, it's still less than a complete day, but we've had it back, since later part of yesterday or halfway through yesterday. So yeah, power is back. Here in Nova Scotia, we have a first world problem. We have problem functioning as a first world territory. Yep, that's kind of a first world problem. Because we have a public utility that is privately owned, or at least the business that provides it is privately owned. So it's privatized, and there's no real competition. Most of us are stuck going to that company, so it's a monopoly, a privatized monopoly on a public utility, which basically translates as, you're fucked.